All right, so let's get started by talking about this idea of matrix division, or something along those lines. I'll tell you more details later. Let's start by talking about division just in typical equations. So take a look at my screen over here, and it's just a blank screen right now. I am going to write out a very simple equation, and it's going to be all in letters just to make it a little bit more generalizable. So I'm going to take x, I'm going to multiply it by some number that I'll call a. So it doesn't matter what a is, it's just some number that is being multiplied to x. And then I'm going to say a times x equals, and we'll say b. So that's my really simple equation. So b and a could be any number value, and here we have x times a, the coefficient, should equal b. Now if I was asked to isolate x, what I would do is I would divide both sides of the equation by a. And that would cause the a's to cancel, and we would get x equals b over a. So that's pretty straightforward. Now, it would also be equally valid if instead of dividing by a, I described what I was doing in this way. If I said, I'm going to multiply this by 1 over a. So instead of saying I'm dividing by a, I could say I'm multiplying by 1 over a on both sides. Now, we actually do this quite a bit when we talk about equations that involve fractions. So let's say that I had 1/3 x equals 2, just to put in a random number, and I want to get rid of that 1/3. We multiply by 3 over 1. And that would be an example of where I'm trying to get rid of a coefficient by multiplying by, we call this the inverse. Say inverse. So one way to get x by itself is to talk about dividing both sides by that value a, and the other way is to talk about multiplying by the inverse. So for instance, instead of 1/3, we multiply by 3 to get rid of the 1/3, something like that. Whoops. Let me give you one more example. So let's say we had like 5x equals 10. And we want to know what x is. I can divide by 5, or I can multiply both sides by 1/5. And the same thing happens. When I multiply by 1/5, 1/5 times 5, it cancels, right? 1 over 5 times 5 over 1, those values cancel and it just becomes 1x, so I'll just say x, equals 10 over 5, which is just 2. And that would be the same answer if I had just divided by 5. So I want you to keep this idea in mind, that in order to isolate our variable, we can divide by a number or we can multiply by the inverse, and either way we're talking about the same thing. Okay, that's it for the first video. We just wanted to agree on how we defined solving simple equations like this. In the next video, I'm going to give you an equation that involves a matrix, and we're going to talk not about just dividing by a matrix, but how we can get rid of a matrix by multiplying by the inverse. So your takeaway from this lesson is, or from this first topic, is that multiplying or dividing by a number is the same as multiplying by the inverse.